is Identity at the Center.
Welcome to the Identity at the Center podcast. I'm Jeff, and that's Jim. Hey, Jim.
Hey, Jeff. How are you?
I am fantastic. How are you?
Fantastic. I'm doing good, but guess what? I got nothing for you today.
Well, I got something for you. I mean, you didn't ask me why I was fantastic. I normally say not so bad, but I was kind of hoping you'd ask why I'm fantastic.
Why is it fantastic, Jeff?
Well, I have a major announcement to make regarding this podcast, and you're going to be here with me as I do this live. You can see my mouse, and I am clicking. What did I just do, Jim?
Did you change the color in your background?
Nope. I do, but not this time.
I don't know what you did.
That
you
was
just got us 1 million subscribers.
I wish 1 million subscribers, but you're very close. We just crossed 1 million downloads for the podcast. So I just posted to LinkedIn that we are officially crossed over into 1 million download territory. So big shout out to everyone who supported us along the way. Very humbling, very exciting. Never would have thought this, 6+ years ago when we started this, but yeah, here we are.
Yeah, man, you're going to get the raw emotions. I can't believe that I knew it was coming, but man, it's really hit me. I just want to say thank you to everybody who supported us along the way, all of our sponsors, all of our listeners, hardcore listeners, people who just pick it up for a few episodes. I mean, we appreciate it all.
Yeah, super cool, monumental. And I guess on to the next million. But, I guess a plea for those out there, if you haven't checked us out or you're not subscribed, you just kind of listen to one off, check us, subscribe, hit that like button, hit us, get us on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or wherever you want to do it. But that definitely helps kind of, show that we've got people out there. But 1 million downloads, that is absolutely crazy for an identity and access management podcast with zero advertising, all word of mouth. And that's it.
Yeah. The funny thing is how many years did it take to reach 100,000? It's really just picked up steam over the last couple of years. And folks, all of our friends, but our friends over at ID Pro, being the official podcast of ID Pro, it certainly didn't hurt.
No, it's super cool. I think, what birds of a feather flock together or something like that. But yeah, super cool. So I just want to take a moment. I'm going to steal the banter from you. I figured and said, hey, I've got something, hit me up first.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you did. So now on to our normal broadcasting.
Regular scheduled broadcasts. We've got a bunch of different events. I just told you before we hit record that I'm on the road every week, starting next week through October for a bunch of different things between my real job, consulting day job, and then the podcast. But we've got cybersecurity summits taking place in Chicago and Philadelphia. Those are both in September. I will be at both of those. We've got discount code CSS25-IDAC, free pass. Share it. I'd love to see a bunch of people in Chicago and Philadelphia. I know way more people in Chicago than I do in Philadelphia, but it'd be cool to meet up with people in both locations. So people check that out. The new one that we just kind of figured out this week is Authenticate 2025. So we are coming back again. And we have some exciting things planned with Megan and Adrian and Andrew and crew for this next year. So we have a discount code for that one as well. That one is in October, and that's the one that's in Carlsbad, California, one of my favorite conferences. But if you enter the code IDAC 2025, you get 20% off. So I'll have that in our show notes. I actually have all these in our show notes. We'll check out. So another conference, that's in October. And then we've got, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is Authenticate. Some people might think to themselves oh, that's a little intimidating, or that's not in my lane. Or they might be looking at some of the other conferences that you mentioned that are, big umbrella cyber and thinking, well, my lane is identity, and be intimidated to go to those conferences. But I think what you see as a trend in this identity industry is that the tent is expanding, the umbrella is expanding, and you need to know cyber. You need to plug into it. You should be opening your mind to what's going on with FIDO and passkeys and just the passwordless revolution, because that's where everything is heading. So even if you think, well, this hasn't been in my lane, first off, they're fantastic conferences. And second off, you to be learning things that are outside of your lane. That's how you're going to become the better practitioner of tomorrow.
Yeah, a good identity professional is well-rounded. They don't know just identity. They're able to talk through other parts of security to understand how those parts contribute to identity. So yeah, even though some of these might be, cybersecurity conferences, guess what? Identity is part of cybersecurity. So you're probably going to learn something or be able to share ideas or things like that with kind of, other folks. But definitely encourage people to come out and check it out. So we've got, let's see, cybersecurity summits. We've got the Authenticate conference. And then we've got the Identiverse Washington, D.C. event coming up in November. Of course, we have a discount code for that one as well. IDV25-IDAC25 gets you some percentage off. I forgot to write it down, but it is on our website, idacpodcast.com. I'm going to guess 25, but you never know. It could be the year. Who knows? And then after that, we've got the Gartner conference, the IAM Summit in Texas in December. And we'll have a discount code for that coming in October. So be on the lookout for that. Again, everything will be on our webpage, idacpodcast.com. Just scroll down on that main page and you'll see everything that we've currently got active. So hopefully people are able to take advantage of that. Definitely supports the show, shows that we can bring people to a conference and have some fun with it too.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, this is why conferences are especially important. Like you've always said, the best part is the hallway conversations and the people you get to bump into and the people that you meet for the first time. Our guest today is somebody we met for the first time at a conference this year. And he's somebody that he's got some really big ideas in the identity space. And that's why you and I were both so excited to get him onto the show today.
Yeah, let's go ahead and introduce our guest. His name is Anthony Viggiano. He's one of the IAM leaders in our space. He's a member of the Identity Underground. He's a member of ID Pro. I met him at Identibeer at the Identiverse conference in Vegas earlier this year. And welcome to the show, Anthony.
Hey, thanks, Jeff, Jim. This is really an honor to be on your podcast talking about one of my passions, identity and access management. Really, thank you. And also want to thank the broader industry, the identity and access management industry. Yeah, going to these conferences, you show up, you're like, okay, am I going to be able to contribute? Am I going to meet anybody? What's it going to be like? And all the conferences that I've been to, RSA, Identiverse, people want to meet, people want to talk, people want to share their own passions about what they do, and they want to build relationships. And then best of all, what I found out is people want to help. I've been on the hunt for my next identity and access management leadership role. And everybody that I talk to, when I kind of mention that, they're like, oh, I know of an opportunity, or I know this company's doing something. And people have been getting me connected. I've been applying to roles, and I would reach out to my network and I'd say, hey, do you know anybody at this company? And they say, yeah, let me shoot the hiring manager an email. I'm so thankful to Jim, you, Jim, and Jeff for helping out with that, and just the community more in general. And I just wanted to say thank you. But also at Identibeer, thanks to my wife, because if it wasn't for her, I don't think we would have met, because I probably would have shown up. Who here loves going to these big open, social events where you don't know anybody? And when I'm walking towards those events and I hear everybody talking, I'm going up the stairs, like my feet feel like lead. I don't want to climb that next step. I'm like thinking to myself, man, all I have to do is go back to my hotel room. I can watch a movie. I can watch 2 movies. I can go to bed early. Anything is better than, walking into a social event. But she came to Vegas with us. She was there. She was like, no, let's go do it. And she supported me and helped me. And she helped, start the conversations. And she's a kindergarten teacher, so she is just as good at talking with her little kindergarten students. Oh, you got a new toy at McDonald's? That's amazing. Or, oh, you're a CISO for a large company? That's amazing. Tell me more. And she could just hold the conversation with anybody, but she makes me feel like I can do anything. And so I just really appreciate her being there with me.
Yeah, it's super cool. I remember meeting her, and I think I asked her more questions about kindergarten than I asked you.
Exactly.
Stuff, but the whole point was to, get to know each other and stuff like that. But yeah, super cool. And look, that's the great part of identity, right? Is it's a big tent, as sort of, Jim mentioned earlier in previous episodes as well, is there's a lot going on, a lot of really good people. And that is one of the strengths of the identity community at large. You get groups like Identity Underground, you get groups like ID Pro, right? For example, that's just cool, man. I mean, no other articulate way to put it other than just it's super cool. So let's talk a little bit about that journey into identity. You've been kind of doing this for a while now. Tell us, how did you get to the identity space? Is it something that you chose, or did it choose you?
Yeah, so it's 2019. And it was a little bit of both. So the company I was a part of just acquired another large organization. We were combining, and there was org changes, and my managers were moving to a new team, and nobody really knew what was going on. And so somehow I had this opportunity where I was asked, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And I said, I want to go with my manager. I really liked what he did. He was very supportive of my career. And I said, I choose this role. Little did I know that meant identity and access management. And so it was the very first week, one of our auditors sat me in his office and said, we haven't been able to do these access reviews, and you've got 2 months before our next audit. Here's what you've got to do. And he, tried to explain what an access review was and all these things. All I remember is, I have no idea what you're talking about, but we'll figure it out. And we did. And I'm happy to kind of share, that journey and how do you be successful at the identity governance and different things like that. But I chose it. And even if I knew what I was getting into, I think I still would have chosen it because it's been an awesome last 6 years.
That's super cool. I mean, there's so much that kind of happens in this space.
Yeah.
In your time in identity, what's something that you see as like a real fundamental challenge today that, all of us are facing in our different roles?
Data. I think data is one of the biggest challenges because if you don't have the data, let's say, for example, in whatever IGA platform that you're using, how can you perform the controls that you need to perform? If you need to run an access review, but you don't know who has access to what, you can't run an access review. If you have the access review and you send it out to their managers, but the descriptions aren't that great, well, how are they going to know whether or not they should say keep or revoke? And so I think that's the biggest challenge. And then how do you solve that challenge is through data integration and being able to get those applications, the source of truth, that who has access to what, into your platforms. And same thing with privileged access management. If you've got that automated rotation, then it works. Then you're getting the value there. But if those passwords aren't being automatically rotated, then the privileged access management, the value isn't there as much. So it's that data integration, the application integration. I think that's a building block that's going to continue to be very important.
Such an interesting answer. I think it's a very receptive answer. It's obviously somebody who's tackled these challenges in the real world. I'll tell you what, Anthony, I thought you were going to say non-human identities, because where I met you first was at Identiverse in the NHI workshop, NHI standing for non-human identities. And it was a full day workshop. I mean, the topic is white hot right now. And I'd love to hear your insight on why you think it's so hot at the moment.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's hot right now at the moment because it's been a problem for a very long time. The service accounts, as we used to call them, have been around for 10, 20 years. So it's not a new problem. But what's making it more urgent, as I think we all know, of AI, is you've got the same problem, and then now you're going to plant on top of that, this new technology. You can't solve the AI problem, the agentic AI problem, with the way we do things today. So I think the questions that we're trying to answer and what we talked about at that panel was, one, how do you build a new foundation? How do you kind of clean up the problems that you have now? And then how do you start fresh so you can build on top of that for the new technologies and capabilities that are coming down the road?
Yeah, I mean, agentic AI definitely plays into it. I kind of feel like the days that happened. So to me, and like you had enterprise IT where you had the service accounts and the application accounts. Then you opened up cloud and platform, and it's like it bursts on the scene with a whole bunch more non-human identities, workloads.
Yeah.
And now AI is going to be the next frontier. I feel like practitioners have struggled to say, how do I solve this with my existing tool set? Or do I need to go out and buy something new? I mean, that's a whole thing that organizations are struggling through right now. I mean, do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah. So I think first you can solve the problem, or at least get a solid start without new tools. So I think anybody can start, any big, large enterprise can start right now with the tools that you have. If you want to automate and kind of streamline those capabilities and really make it more scalable, then you're probably going to want to invest in some tools. But start fresh. And that is really just your good old fashioned Excel spreadsheet. Is you run reports out of your source of truth, which is, can be Active Directory, it can be your Windows machines, it can be, the Linux machines, anywhere where those non-human identities live. Run those reports, discover what exists, figure out what they have access to. Are they administrative accounts on these servers, or do they have just really basic access to run a report on a daily basis or something? Because there's all kinds of different use cases. Prioritize them, and then figure out, okay, what ones do we still need and which ones do we not? And there's a lot of manual work that goes into play there. It's now you've got the data. Let's say you have 50,000 non-human identities. Well, now we got to figure out who owns them. We got to figure out what they do. We got to figure out if they're still used. And that's a huge thing. Is I would bet a lot of those accounts that you're going to discover aren't even used anymore. And wouldn't it be great to eliminate those and reduce your attack surface instead of just letting them sit around saying, I'm a little nervous to terminate them because I don't know what they do and I don't want to, break a system. So, there's a real balance there, but that's an example of what you can do now without any new technology.
It's a pretty pragmatic approach. I think if I was to summarize it, because I was thinking this as you're going, don't let perfection be the enemy of better, right? Like, if you can get better, if you can solve it. And I think the other element is like we've been talking about this in identity for so long. It's like having a good inventory, having good visibility, and that data element. Like, do you understand what these accounts, where the accounts are, and then what do they do? And some people get mad because I use the term accounts, but I don't really care. But here's a question. So I will say you made the most memorable statement from my perspective in Identiverse 2025, which is you said access reviews are security theater. And I was like, holy cow, who goes to an identity conference, goes on stage and says that takes some guts. But I kind of wonder, like, okay, we have all this data. Now we know what is going on with the data. Don't you have to involve the user? So what is your perspective in terms of access reviews and what you say their security theater?
Yeah, no, thanks. I do believe that, at scale, at large organizations, it's going to be more theater than it is actually reducing risk. And I kind of say that to get a little bit of attention, and it looks like it worked. So thanks for pointing that out, Jim. But let me explain that to your point. Let me unpack that a little bit. So just think about how much a company spends on performing an access review. Let's just say, they have a team, maybe costs $2 million per year for that team to run. That just focuses on access reviews. Okay, so $2 million per year. And then you've got, let's say for an organization with 100,000 users, you've got 10,000 managers now that on a quarterly basis have to go into and perform these access reviews. So let's just say it takes them an hour. What's the value of somebody's time? Multiply that by 10,000 4 times per year. That's millions of dollars per year that an organization is spending on performing these access reviews. And so that's the cost aspect. Now let's look at the return aspect. So if you don't have all that, life cycle management, all that stuff that we talked about a minute ago in terms of not great descriptions, you don't really know what this access does. How many managers are going to take the risk and say, I don't think he needs this anymore, so let me just revoke it? Well, then your team can't do their job anymore. So oftentimes, and you can just look at your data, what is the revoke rate for your access reviews? Is it just a couple percent per cycle? So you've got 3 million lines and only a couple percentage points of that was revoked. Is that really providing the risk reduction that you're looking for? Maybe it should be 10%. Maybe it should be 20%. I don't really know what that threshold should be, but I know it's probably not 1 or 2%. So that's where I say take a look. Is the investment, is the money that you're putting into these access reviews, is it giving you the return, the risk reduction that you're looking for? Now on the other side, you can't forget about audit and compliance. That is important. Yes, we want to make the investment. We need to be compliant. We need to pass our access reviews, our audits. And so that's an important thing. So I would never say, forget it. Don't do it. We don't need to do it anymore. But in terms of risk reduction, if we think these access reviews are truly reducing risk, in some cases, I would double check that.
Yeah, it's not that you're targeting the whole idea behind it. It's how's it actually approached? How's it actually done? Is it being done in an effective way? So given that, I think you are in favor of identity governance. And By the way, I'm linking identity governance and access reviews. They are kind of linked.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's not like the whole thing of identity governance. Where do you take identity governance and how do you make it more effective?
Sure. Yes, I love identity governance. That was really the focus of my job and why I'm so passionate about the access reviews. So one, let's kind of like think about a whole new approach to access reviews. Again, not saying we stop what we're doing, but if we want to reduce risk, who is better to know what access I need to do my job than me? Nobody. I know when I need to do my job. And yes, maybe again, the descriptions aren't as great and different things, but I'm going to know more than my manager is going to know in terms of, in most cases, what I need. So how do we, one, do a self-service access review? Doesn't have to be audited, doesn't have to, be, official control, but then incentivize these employees to actually reduce the entitlements, because then it'll be the same thing. We'll just rubber stamp everything. So you got to provide that incentive. And this was an idea of one of my team members on my team. She thought, we were like talking about it. And she's like, oh, well, to get them to do it, give them an incentive. So you've got points. Some companies have these, point systems. Give them 10 points per entitlement that they revoke. Or if you could do cash, $5 for every entitlement. And I bet you're going to have people that have been at the company a long time that can go out and buy a brand new TV just by eliminating some of these entitlements. And now you are truly reducing the attack surface. So if one of those accounts gets phished, that attacker has less access than they would have before you did that exercise.
This idea of gamification is something that I've been a fan of for a very long time. I remember when I was first rolling out self-service password reset a few decades ago at this point, and we were not getting the number of enrollments and registrations that we wanted. It was kind of languishing despite us doing communications and emails and stuff like that. And this would have been like late 2000s, I would say. And so I don't remember who came up with it, but we had a team, and it was like, all right, let's give away an iPad. So this is when iPads first came out. Yeah, I think at that point they were $400 or whatever it was, right? So it's like, all right, let's give away an iPad, and anybody who is registered in our self-service password system basically has an entry in the system and would be raffled off. And we went from something like 30% enrollment, and we gave it a quarter just to kind of get the message out there and get people rolling. And by the end of a 1 quarter, we had gotten up over like 90% enrollments just for $400 iPad.
Yep.
The best money that we spent in $1 million IAM program was a $400 iPad to drive awareness and incentivize people to do it. So yeah, you're totally right. There's lots of point systems like that. I mean, my mom used to give us points when we were growing up. I don't know when I'm going to be able to cash those in, but I must have a zillion points at this point.
Nice.
Jeff forgot to mention that, and it's a great iPad. He still has it.
If you know me, you know that I enjoy the finer things in life and tend to rotate my equipment on a yearly basis. But I think,
I know you, and I know you wouldn't do that and take the integrity out of it. I was actually wondering, Anthony. So let's stay in this identity governance lane, and one of the other areas that gets talked about in terms of being ripe for revolution. And by the way, I love your idea, not only on the giveaway, but having people, or the gamification, but having people do their own reviews. And it kind of like flies in the face of, or it's like a revolutionary idea. And like, why can't we have kind of these big ideas? The industry's having a big idea right now, which is that maybe RBAC isn't all it's cracked up to be. And I'm wondering, where do you stand on RBAC?
Yeah, no, I definitely have some thoughts on that. Before we go there, though, if I can go back to access reviews, because I want to share a little bit more about how do we make access reviews successful? Because yes, maybe they're a little bit of theater, and maybe we have some other approaches that we can kind of take care of reducing risk other ways, but you still got to do an access review. How do you make it successful? And early in the days when I was kind of talking about my first experience, we really struggled. And one, people weren't even completing the reviews. You go in, you send out the emails, you get 70% response, 50% response. So if you're struggling with that, here is a really fun trick that we learned. It's people's human nature, when you give them a due date, to wait until that due date to take the action. So we would send the email. We'd say, you've got 30 days to perform this access review. We'd give them the 30 days. And then guess what? How many people do you think completed those access reviews in those 30 days? Very few people. They waited, and then you got to the deadline, and then, oops, I ran out of time. I got other priorities, not going to do it. And then, and it was a little bit messy. So our approach was a couple of different things. Number one, as soon as possible, no deadline. Do not give people a deadline when it's urgent and it's important. Is say, this has to be done as soon as possible. And then we'd drill them with email. We do 3 different emails every other day, and they would get those emails. So within 1 week now, we went from, not great response in 30 days to now 90% responsiveness within the first 1 week. So that was a huge, huge transition. And then number 2 is on the second week, that's when we start escalating, and we'll copy people's manager. And now the manager will say, oh, okay, yeah, maybe, the person's out of the office. Maybe they, really are doing other priorities, whatever. It doesn't matter what the issue is. And now the managers help motivate their team members, but it's, tiny subset. It's 10% of the total population. And then by the time we get to that 10-day mark, we're at 99%. And then, we're just going to, direct message people, figure out people are on vacation, reassign different things like that to get that last 1%. But that was a big thing for us. And then really improving the communications is giving them the right information. So, instead of getting this kind of cryptic email, I get all the instructions. I get one click, boom, I'm in. I see the instructions in the email. Very simple to understand. Do that. Communication to leadership. So now they can get reports on a daily basis to track, their team, by leader, who on my team is getting it done and who's not getting it done. So really just data, key performance indicators, and communication was what made our transition from not so successful access reviews to very successful access reviews. All right, now Jim, to get to your question on role-based access controls.
Let me butt in there for a second though, because
please, Jeff.
One of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is access reviews and getting a response. Yeah. So I have to imagine, myself included, we've all tried sending a bunch of emails and saying, do this. And then they don't do it, or they rubber stamp it. And it's like not an effective, it's security theater at that point, kind of to your point, right?
Right.
How you have to have some sort of carrot and or stick, or maybe both, for that email to be taken seriously. What is some tips or guidance to get that? Because I think a lot of people struggle with this, myself included, when I was doing this, was like, I can send as many emails as I want, but short of me walking over to their desk, getting them in a headlock and making them sit at their computer and make a decision, people just don't do it. Or they find other reasons or excuses not to do it, or worse, they rubber stamp it, which is a real problem.
Yeah. I've done all those things minus the headlock. So, but I bet that would be just as effective.
Aggressive negotiations is what I will call it.
There you go. That's better. So for us, it was making the email very clear, helping people understand what's in it for me, or why is this important, and kind of building that on the culture. So we made it very clear, you are responsible for the enterprise's security. You are responsible for the enterprise's audit and compliance. And here's how you can help. And then, so we communicate that. And then we just try to really communicate how we hear people. Like, yes, we know this is not the greatest experience. We hear you. Here's the changes that we make. Or, hey, we have bi-weekly or twice per week lunch and learns, where you get this email, and if you don't understand what you're doing, click this WebEx at this time, and boom, you'll join, and we'll help you. We'll walk you through it. So it's really more support, more hands-on approach, where people can come for the help, so that they're not just kind of frustrated, where they're going in, they're trying to figure it out, can't figure it out, and don't know what to do. And then now, to your point, you have to go track them down. We're giving them the avenue, the communication, the channel to come find us. And we make it easier and easier for them to find us, but then to, more importantly, just to be able to get it done on the first try. For example, investing a lot in improving our descriptions. And that's time intensive. You have to go to the application team. You have to ask them what it does. You say, nope, that's not a great description. Let's make it a little bit more user friendly. Doing all those things that takes time, but that really pays dividends, because now as a manager, you see, oh yeah, I know what this does. Easy decision, yes or no. Versus, I have no idea what this does, rubber stamp.
So now my RBAC question.
Okay, yeah, let's get to RBAC. So RBAC, just like a lot of governance, is complex. And when you start small and you're like, oh yeah, this should be simple. Let's do this. Let's, for example, give anybody the ability to request a role. Sounds like it won't be a big deal, but then a few years later, you've got 15,000 roles. And some of those roles have the same entitlements. Some of those roles have only one or two entitlements. And you've just got a mess on your hands. The people that requested them are long gone. So it's a life cycle management problem there, and that's not scalable. So opening it up like that and kind of letting it be just no standards, anybody can do what they want. That's not going to work. And we discovered that the hard way. So what can you do instead if you want to do roles? Because the question is, what's the value of roles? Well, going to access reviews. If I could review 5 roles versus 100 individual entitlements, that's going to be a lot quicker. So there's value there. If I'm being onboarded and I only need to request a couple different roles, and instead of, again, hundreds of entitlements, there's value there. The person can do their job much quicker. So there is definitely value in roles. But now we want to choose, okay, how do we simplify it? And choosing just a good structure. And it could be anything. For example, you could choose the structure at the senior leadership level. Probably don't want to get down to the individual manager level because, if it's a large enterprise, again, you're going to have the same problem. But maybe at the senior leadership level, okay, the senior leader for all his team gets this role. And yes, it's not going to be everything for everyone, but it might solve some basic problems. Or you could do it at the project level. This is going to be a 3-year project. This is everything in the project that you need, the different shared folders and such. Anybody who joins that project gets the role. And that's pretty simple. Or you could do it at the application level. Instead of having to request 5 different entitlements or global groups for an application, this job, you need to do this function, you get this role. And so that is how I would recommend implementing it and keeping it much more simple and laid back and not trying to give everybody everything they need just in roles. You're going to have to still go outside of roles. But if you can kind of do the mass and then roles, I think you can find the nice balance of value there.
Yeah, it seems like you're applying like a pragmatism to it as well, which is why I love having practitioners on the show, because it's taking the theory and then taking the reality and mushing them together and figuring out what works. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there are advances in the technology, and when those advances come along, I think it's our job to kind of consider them and how can we work them in. What do you think of kind of some of the newer approaches like PBAC and not really new, but ABAC, like how do you fit those into an enterprise identity governance program?
Yeah, I think you could kind of pick and choose which approach you want to take, or you can kind of do a hybrid model. Yeah, the attribute-based access control, I really like that. And I think some of the new identity governance tools are trying to build on that. And I think that has a lot of potential. And the use case there is based on all the attributes that I come into a company with: location, team, manager, job title, all kinds of different attributes. Based on those attributes, I'm going to automatically get the access that I need to do my job. Now, here's the question. Just like RBAC, that requires rules. So who is going to manage the rules that automates those settings? And who's going to be responsible for that? So I think at scale, again, if you try to complicate it and just say, oh yeah, everybody's going to get everything they need automatically everywhere, don't know if that's going to be scalable or if you're going to be able to implement that and maintain the life cycle of that at a large enterprise. So I think you'll kind of see similar issues.
So I am on record as not being a fan of RBAC. I think it's a big quagmire that a lot of companies struggle with. Mm-hmm. I am a big fan, however, of attribute-based and policy-based because I feel like those are easier to start with, but it goes back to almost the first topic we talked about, which was data. You have to have good data to do any of this, but it is especially important for attribute and policy-based access controls, which rely on data to make those decisions. So what happens if I don't have data? Am I stuck? Or can I use at least what I have and hope that it's good? Like, where would you start if you were just joining an organization and you're like, okay, how do we fix authorizations and try to get them managed from a life cycle standpoint?
Yeah, no, it starts with the data and integration and understanding the data. So let's start with provisioning as an example. You can use attribute-based, you can use RBAC, but if those applications aren't fully integrated and you have humans that are getting a ticket from your request system, and then you're waiting 10 days and then that person gets the ticket and then they go and they provision that access, there's going to be problems. They're going to maybe accidentally, provision the wrong thing. Maybe they'll forget, they'll miss the ticket. Maybe when somebody's terminated, that ticket won't get processed in time. And now you've got, access that is there for too long. We need to integrate those applications, and we need to get those data that automate that provisioning and that termination process. And then Jeff, that kind of gets to your question on where do we start? Well, now if you have all these provisioners that no longer need to do provisioning, now you've got an army of people that can go after the data. And I think that's where we can kind of make that transition is one, integrate systems so that we're getting the data feeds. Number two, leverage those people to improve the quality of that data. And then now you've got the two things that you need in place, the automation and integration and the data quality to implement any of these rules that you want to implement, whether it's ABAC, RBAC, authorization, just-in-time authorization, all kinds of different capabilities that rely on the data and automation. Now you've got that problem solved.
So when are you done with roles? Can you be done with roles? Or when do you call it done? Is it 80% of my access is a role or an attribute-based bundle of some sort? Is it 50%? Because I'll give you my hot take is I don't think you're ever done.
Right.
And I don't know if 100% is actually realistic.
Right. Yeah. And I think you can apply that same thought process to just about any identity governance approach is you are never going to be done. Because as long as there's people coming in and out of your company, and you've got new owners for non-human identities or for roles or for entitlements, you've got new applications coming in, it is never going to be done. You're always going to be making changes. So that's why having the foundation of a lifecycle process, a system in place that's going to manage all of your identity assets, everything, this, very similar process for all of these things, where it's easy for if I leave the company, who's going to take ownership of that. All that stuff is very easy, very well communicated, automated. So yeah, Jeff, you're right. It's never done. You're always going to be changing things, and but you can build lifecycle and process that can really simplify it.
I've seen the term roles used to mean so many different things at different organizations, all the way from very vendor specific definitions to just talk about active directory groups and call them roles, or applications calling their specific entitlements roles. So I think that's one of the things that as an industry, that term gets thrown around to mean so many different things. But one of the things that I found a lot is that a lot of organizations strive to get to one role per person. And then essentially what you wind up having is if you have 2,500 employees, you have 2,500 roles. And it's like, what's the point?
No point.
Well, there's no point, right?
Yes.
But we have roles.
Right. Yes.
So there you go. We have roles and we're
like
good.
access reviews. We could say we got it.
So I want to kind of string along this part of the conversation and get into more of the authoritative source things, because I think this is kind of important for anything that we're going to do around authorizations and lifecycle is how do we know where the data is coming from? What is the authoritative source for humans? And then when you talk about humans, are we talking about employees? Are we talking about non-employees like contractors or vendors or customers or patients or XYZ, right? There's a whole bunch of personas out there. I think generally speaking, most companies do a pretty good job of managing their people. Where still a lot stumble, but I think it is getting better, is the non-employees of an organization typically are not as well managed. They may not be in the same system. They may not be in a system at all. They might just live in an ad hoc spreadsheet. I've kind of seen it all at this point. Where do you come down on this one of the holy wars we've had for a very long time, especially in the IGA world, is what is the authoritative source for all of our humans? Should it be the HR platform? Should it be a neutral platform? Should it be like maybe the identity governance system? Maybe that's the authoritative source. Like, where do you fall into sort of that human versus, or sorry, not human, employee versus non-employee? And then the extension of that question obviously gets into, okay, so now we've got non-human identities. Where do we source those from?
Yeah, a couple layers there. First, that is important because employees, most companies are going to vet the people, the identity proofing themselves, and they probably have a really good system. And so they can rely on, I'm hiring Jim McDonald, and I know that. When it comes to contractors, oftentimes we're relying on third parties to do that background check and that vetting. And haven't we seen a growth in laptop farms where we've got people from North Korea that are actually getting jobs in US companies and their laptops are somewhere physically in the US, but the person is actually not who we think that they are. That's happening in real life. And so that's a real scary thing because now they have access and they're acting like a normal employee. It's really hard to detect after that. So yes, so your question is very important because of that as one example as an attack vector. So in my opinion, I like one source for all of people and some sort of like a Workday platform or whatever kind of platform that you want to use. And you can have different points of entry though, for example. So, for Workday, you've got, you can have your employees coming in, and then for contractors, you can have them coming in requested through a completely different platform, but they're going to live in the same source of truth. And that will get fed into your identity governance platform with different attributes. So you can kind of tell the difference. And then I want to build on that when it comes to, we talked about source of truth. Applications are your source of truth when it comes to who has access to what, because now that's important. Because if, you need to make a decision, well, who has access to this application or who has administrative access, the only way you're going to know who has the risky access, where you want to make that investment of what you want to protect, the access you want to protect and the people and the accounts that you want to protect is you need to know what they have access to. So that starts with the source of truth, which is the application or Active Directory or the servers. And then I kind of differentiate, maybe we could use different terms, the authoritative source, which is really where you aggregate all that information. And I want my identity governance platform to be an authoritative source. And in order for that to happen, that means I need to have good data feeds, good integration into there. And I'll just give you one example. What we've done is a lot of, like I said, first thing you want integration, you want automation there. But if you can't do that, or maybe you can't do that right away, is you can build an ETL, which is basically you get a flat file from the source of truth, the application. It's a standard format. It follows a template, and then it gets dropped in some sort of shared location. And then your identity governance tool consumes that data, that standardized data, and now you've got that. And let's say you do that on a weekly basis. That's almost as good as an automated feed. So those are some things, some solutions where, okay, I can't build out integration because I got this legacy platform, but you still can build some level of integration. And now you've got your authoritative sources talking to your sources of truth, talking to your authoritative sources, and you have everything on that one identity governance platform.
So I'm glad you made that distinction between source of truth and authoritative source, because I think that is very important to highlight here. Data comes from sources.
Yes.
The collation of that data and the aggregation and the correlation of that data is where your authoritative source lives. So maybe that is the IGA platform, for example. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a privileged access management platform for like non-human identities, right? Things like that. What I find happen quite a bit is that IT solves the problem on their own without involving the business or having the business be accountable for non-employee identity. It's left up to the managers and they kind of figure it out. And we all know managers are great at doing, what they've been asked because they do access certification so well. So, what happens when there isn't a process and IT has to kind of figure it out. And maybe if the IM team kind of has to figure it out, and all of a sudden IT or the IM team or some combination in there owns the population of non-employees. Mm-hmm. What happens in that scenario? How do we get back on track for that?
Sure. So what I've kind of learned, or the approach I like to take, is centralization. So when you have fragmentation for pretty much, I wouldn't say any system, but for, let's say governance, identity governance, is you've got different teams doing different things or nothing at all. So I would rather centralize a system and a life cycle and say, I'm going to be in charge of this life cycle and this process, but here is your responsibility. And then kind of distribute that out to the business, to our technology partners, and make it super easy. So for example, non-human identity management, lifecycle management. I'm going to say, this is the source of truth. They're going to live in our identity governance tool. Maybe they live in our PAM tool, and everything's going to be in there. And here's how you get it in there. Here's how you register it. And then you're going to maintain that. So every year you're going to change the password. You're going to make sure it's automatically rotated in the privileged access management tool. It's going to have a compliant password, not just, password 123 or, different things like that. But that's going to be centrally managed. And then we're going to distribute that and we're going to know who owns it. And we're going to communicate to them and say, here's your responsibility. And we're going to simplify that. That's the other aspect of it, is if it takes me a month to create a new non-human identity for the application that I was supposed to stand up 2 weeks ago, and I can't because I don't have my account yet, who do you think is going to want to go through that process again? They're going to, the next application they stand up, they're going to say, well, I got a Surface account that works. I'm just going to use that all over again. And it's used over again and over and over. And now you need to reset that password because it was compromised, or you want to keep it rotated. And now nobody knows where it lives. So Jeff, to answer your question, centralized system, process, and management, and then very clear communication to the owners with a lifecycle management, and then great communication to leaders saying, you own these accounts. Here are the accounts that are in compliance under your ownership, and here's the ones that are not. And we're communicating to your teams 90, 60, 30 days out when the password needs to be rotated or when something needs to change. And here's how easy we're making it for you to follow the standards.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you a question about, what is your advice to practitioners to future-proof their identity program? And I don't think you can future-proof it, but I think you can approach it with the framework. So we brought up, how enterprise IT was done in the past, and you brought in the cloud, and it became like a big issue for identity people because they didn't see this trend coming in a lot of cases and didn't prepare for it and said, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. And then this thing came along and became half of the enterprise.
Yeah.
The next thing you can see coming is AI. Like, if you're not thinking through these problems and seeing where the industry's going, it's going to sneak up on you.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, like, it's almost like I'm destroying my own question. I don't think there is a way to future-proof it, but what kind of tips do you have for your fellow practitioners in terms of building a program that doesn't get blindsided?
Sure. Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, that's finding the balance between managing your technical debt, which is, those passwords those accounts that you don't know who owns, the passwords aren't rotated, the large attack surface, and being able to do the new technology. Because if we're, a company and you're not looking at AI right now, you're probably going to get left behind. But at the same time, if you're not also investing and cleaning up and managing the life cycle and reducing the technical debt, then by the time you're ready to implement AI, are you going to be able to? Because it doesn't have the data it needs to do its job or different things like that. So I'm with you, Jim. It's going to be hard, but I think we have to make a balanced approach and try to do both.
Well, no one has said identity and access management was easy. That's why we've all been doing it for decades at this point.
Yep.
So I want to kind of wrap up the conversation here. I have a professional segue. I talked to earlier about climbing the mountain to 1 million downloads. And so I want to come down that mountain on a mountain bike. I know that you are a mountain biker. I have never been, but I live in an area where it's very popular, Asheville, North Carolina area. Yeah. So lots of trails, lots of stuff to do that. I think the last time I rode a bike was probably 10 years ago. So I could probably test out that theory that you never forget how to ride a bike, and that would probably look pretty ridiculous. But how often, I mean, I know you're a mountain biker, but how often do you go? Tell me about this. And for a newbie like me, how do I get started?
Sure. Well, I see mountain biking as kind of a metaphor to life. You feel like you're going uphill most of the time, and it's hard and it's a slog. And sometimes you don't feel like you're ever going to get there, but then you get to the flat, or even better, the downhill, and you just get into this flow state and you're just having the time of your life. And so that's one of the things I love about mountain biking, but even more is teaching youth mountain biking. My son, who's 15, he mountain bikes. My daughter, who's 11, she mountain bikes, and she just did a race and got third place up in Vermont this past weekend. And it really brings a tear to my eye to watch these little kids doing just that, climbing up these hills, sometimes having to get off their bike and push up the hill, but doing it because they want to, doing it because they know they'll make it up, and doing it because it's fun. And I want to instill that, that kind of thing into kids' lives. And so I'm passionate about that. But how do you get into it? Yeah, I think, Jeff, just hop on that bike, find some easy trails, and I can send you some links to those. But yeah, start on the road and just really have a good time. I'll tell you, the e-bikes they make these days are pretty awesome. I haven't tried one yet, but I think they make mountain biking more accessible to anybody who wants to try it. And it definitely makes going uphill even easier. So that's the life I want to live, where it's like I'm on an e-bike all the time and going uphill is no problem.
Okay, so you stole my next question, because I was going to ask if using an e-bike is cheating, because then I'm all in. If I can use an e-bike, that sounds a little more recreational, for me.
Go for it.
Okay, so let's say I want to get an e-bike. Like, how much easier is it to use an e-bike versus like a normal bike?
Yeah.
Is it significantly easier?
No, yeah. It's I think the great thing is the technology is pretty good. So it doesn't feel that much different in terms of just the riding dynamics, because they're still pretty light. Yeah, maybe they weigh, an extra 20 pounds, but that's not going to make too much of a difference. So the riding experience is going to be about the same, but it's really the going at pills, and maybe if you're riding with a group trying to keep up, that's where it really helps. And I think it's worth it, especially if you're new or you really want to try it out. I love the idea of e-bikes.
I have to imagine they're probably split out as a separate class of bike or something when you're doing races, right? It's e-bikes only versus no e-bikes.
Yes, they do. And those e-bikes can go pretty quick. They shave a few minutes off every lap. I was just looking at that for the recent race. I was like, oh, how much faster did they go than me? They went a lot faster.
I can absolutely believe that, because I was in Amsterdam over the summer break while we were at EIC. I spent the week there, and there were bikes. Plenty, which I thought was very cool. And then there was a few people on e-bikes, and boy, were they moving on some of those streets and some of the park paths that we were kind of traversing. And it seemed a lot easier to me. And so I was kind of a fan of that. I think, so I have actually thought about getting an e-bike because I do enjoy biking. I just don't have the gumption to get out there and, get my Huffy Sigma out, which is the bike that I grew up on with my Tron sort of, covers, stuff like that. But e-bikes interest me. Jim, have you ever ridden on an e-bike, Jim?
Never on an e-bike, no. I mean, that is about the speed that I'm at now, though. I used to trail run, and everybody who is not into running is like, why would you do that to yourself? But what they don't realize is once you get into a level of fitness where it doesn't hurt, your heart's not pumping out of your chest, maybe you're breathing heavy, but you're used to it, so it's not that bad. It's a great way to, it's almost like meditating while you're running. But I was going to say, I did give mountain biking a chance when I was college age, and I really liked it. But here's my tip for anybody. If you think you can go to Walmart and buy what looks like a mountain bike for $99 and ride that, you're going to be sorry. And here's what I mean. So I had one of those bikes because I didn't have any money and I wanted to do this thing. And so there was a flight of steps that it obviously not in the mountain, but it was on the campus. And I rode down the flight of steps and it bent my rims and it became oval shaped. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So now I can see why somebody would pay $400 per rim, because if you don't, the last thing you want to do is go up all the way up the mountain, start going down, and then you can't ride down. You got to carry your bike out. And I had a friend who said, if you ain't hiking, you ain't biking. So that was when Anthony was talking about carrying that bike up. Yep. And that's what I was thinking with the e-bike. I'm wondering, are those things 10 times heavier than a regular mountain bike?
It's not too bad.
They're not too bad? Okay. Yeah. So maybe you can carry those.
Yeah, if you need to, but they'll push you up just about any angle. That's not.
And the heavy part is what? The battery, probably, right?
Yeah.
Is the battery the heaviest part?
Yep.
Okay. I've toyed with it. I have to explore it. I think it's super interesting. I've thought about, maybe e-bike. Well, why don't I just get a electric motorcycle or something like that, which is probably the next step. Jim, I know you used to have a bike. Do you still have a bike?
Motorcycle? No, I sold it when I moved because I didn't want to move it across country, but Denise has a Harley and I'm going to get something. It won't be a Harley. It'll probably be an Indian. I think those are really sharp looking, or I might get something custom or something electric. I really haven't decided yet.
I would be very impressed if you got an electric bike. That would frankly shock me, but I think it would be super cool.
I think it would be cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, why not?
I mean, I drive electric cars and they're super fast and super quick. And that's why I like about them. I can't imagine an electric motorcycle. I would instantly be in the hospital just by looking at it.
I bought electric dirt bikes for my kids when they were real little, and they used to just zoom around the house. And the thing was, they were cheap and they broke all the time. But that wasn't because they were electric. That was because they were cheap.
Okay. Well, shout out to any e-bike makers. If you want to sponsor an episode, come on. We'll make an exception for non-identity sponsors and stuff like that. I'll take an e-bike. Yeah. That's fine.
Absolutely.
All right, Anthony, it's been a great catching up with you again. It was great meeting you at Identiverse. Say hello to your wife, and hopefully she's got this new school year probably coming up here in the next few weeks if she hasn't started already. Yeah.
Yep.
And hopefully we'll see you at some of these conferences coming up, and we'll see you in the ID Pro channels, and I'm sure Identity Underground and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, thank you for spending time with us. I'll have a link in our show notes for your LinkedIn profile so people can reach out and either ping you with IM questions or mountain biking or whatever.
Yeah. No, to my earlier point, I really want to support the community. So please reach out if there's anything you think I can help out with. I want to help. So reach out, and also shout out to my team. A lot of the stuff that I talked about, they're the ones who are in the trenches doing the work and have all the ideas that kind of got us to where we had the last 6 years. So just want to say thanks to them and all their hard work, because they're doing the hard part.
I am heroes left and right all over the place. But the one thing I will caution is heroism is not a strategy. I had a call last night with some folks. Heroism is great, but it is not a strategy. So shout out to all the IM heroes out there, with the sheer force of will making their organizations work. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out for this week. Find us on the web, idacpodcast.com. Congrats, Jim, to you and me for 1 million downloads. Here's to the next million. Like, subscribe, share with a friend, share with an enemy. I don't care. As long as people are liking and subscribing, that's all that matters. And we'll go ahead and leave it for this week. Thanks, everyone, for watching and or listening, and we'll talk with you all in the next one.
You've been listening to Identity at the Center. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hit the website at identityatthecenter.com. See you next time on Identity at the Center.